I think, if we're just equating success in music to the number of streams, the number of followers, those sorts of things, that's a race to the bottom. That is not how you build a business, and that's not how you really connect with people in the long term.
This podcast is sponsored by Allfeed, a decentralized blockchain solution for the music industry. Produced by Amplitude Ventures, your partners in early-stage music tech. Kit, also known as Keep in Touch, is an album format bridging the digital and physical worlds of music. This is a conversation about digital ownership and why the West might finally be ready to fall in love with physical media again. It's a part philosophy and full-on real talk about the future of music I had with its CMO and North America President Jennifer Sullivan. Hey guys, welcome back to the Sound Connections podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that I haven't seen for a while, but is immensely popular, especially in the East and now coming to the West. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Jennifer, I've been looking forward to this because I talk a lot with people on the podcast about monetization and basically trying to make more money as an artist. That's basically the base conversation of most in the industry. And Kit is something that's quite innovative in the Western world that is sort of being launched into our markets. We'll cover that. But before we go into that, Jennifer, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Jennifer Sullivan. I'm Chief Marketing Officer and President of North America for KiTbetter, where I lead marketing and business development for the Kit album format.
And we're going to talk a lot about Kit today. And I think maybe it's time that they describe to him what Kit is. And maybe you even have something you'd show us. Most listeners are in
Absolutely.
videos, so we can understand this product.
Yeah, so I found the Kit album at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas a couple of years ago, and I hadn't heard of it before. I was looking for trends and things that were emerging technologies that I could share with the clients that I was working with at my agency, and I immediately felt like this was Hit Clips, which was a product in the 90s that was very, very popular. It was a Hasbro product, and I was consulting for Hasbro, so I reminded me of Hit Clips. And when I learned that this was a physical format that connected to the digital world, I was intrigued. So essentially, our company started in 2012. KitBetter started in 2012 with NFC technology. And NFC, as you know, is used for Apple Pay, connects your device using an NFC reader. Our technology over the past decade has evolved. So we started with NFC. We still manufacture some NFC products, but what we use is ultrasonic technology. So it's ultrasonic NFC, UNFC is what we call it, the patented technology that uses just the microphone on any smart device to connect a physical product to a digital experience. And it's an audio-visual digital experience. So a Kit album, it actually stands for Keep in Touch. Kit stands for Keep in Touch. So it's a Keep in Touch album. It is something you can hold in your hands. It's something tangible that you can collect, that an artist can sell, which is more profitable for artists in the era of streaming. But it also provides something of value. So I'll show you. I have a Kit album right here. So this is our standard format. We call it the jewel box. Jewel box comes with things inside. So you open up the jewel box, and inside, I'm gonna show you. You not only get photo cards, which we started in K-pop. So K-pop obviously is very big into collecting and showing fandom, having little collector cards and things like that. But this is the Kit device. So every Kit
Immediate.
album, depending on the format, regardless of the format, comes with the Kit device. And this is essentially a little speaker. So I know we're tech nerds here. I can tell you that there's a little speaker inside of this that emits an ultrasonic sound that communicates to any smart device that this is Jennifer's album. So this isn't just the album of this artist. This isn't just this particular version of the album. This is my personal album. It's a one-to-one connection. And I'll tell you in a second why that's important, but I'll show you a quick demo. So this is my Kit player. So this is an app on my phone. This does work with artists' apps as well. So we just released an album with Jisoo from Blackpink. She
Mm.
has her own app. She's one of those larger artists. She has her own app. we work with her app as well, but I like this because it kind of brings us back to iTunes, where you
Mm.
have your kind of digital library. So I have my physical product. I have the product that I can put on my shelf, but then I have my kit, which is this little device. You hold it next to the microphone on your phone like this,
Mm.
and it unlocks the album. I'm gonna turn off the music for a second. It brings up the lyrics to the song, so if I want, I can sing along. We do for some artists, we accept stems, so we can actually do karaoke mode. So if you wanna sing along with your song, you can. Um, we also have all the videos all in one place. So again, like, artists are creating audio-visual albums now, these visual experiences, rather than send them off to YouTube and off to Spotify and off to other platforms. It's all in one place. And that's important because we are also able to see post sale data, which is something that doesn't exist for any other physical format. So if you sell a CD or you sell a vinyl, you have a one way relationship with that fan. It's just like any other consumer product. With a physical digital hybrid product, you're actually benefiting from digital insights. So you get
True.
information about the fans' engagement. So I can see that Jennifer is checking out my pictures. I can tell that Jennifer is listening to this track a ridiculous amount of times. That must be my most popular track. Maybe I should release that as my single. There's a
Mm.
lot of information that they can get. And then there's a fan community as well. So the fan community section, I think, is also something that as we develop as a platform, this is going to be the most important piece of the experience is where fans can actually connect with each other. These are fans that actually own the product. So it's
Mm.
a subset of super fans that are able to kind of come together and share their fandom. But the beautiful thing about this product is that it is affordable. We don't cost anything for artists to release on our platform. Any artist can put their music up on our website, their music, their videos, their photos, create a kit album without any upfront costs and make it available on kitbetter.com. We also we ship to 200 countries worldwide, and our minimum order quantity for artists, especially independent artists that are just getting started, is only 30. So where other formats have much higher minimum order quantities, we start at just 30 because we want to make this an affordable way for artists to give something of value to their fans.
Amazing. Throughout doing the podcast, I've gotten to think about myself almost more as an academian. And because I come from music, I also come from actual music, not just industry. But I also have sort of like a bit distant relationship to music. I covered this very briefly before we started, where my interest in music really has been the infrastructure for a long time rather than the music in itself. And when it comes to this particular thing, like I grew up where CDs were big for me when I was 10 maybe, but, like, it sort of disappeared, and I've never had the relationship with the physical element of music, really, because I remember my first relationship with really controlling my own music, I had Swedish friends, so that was Spotify. Like, that's where my music journey, started. Maybe that will age me a bit, but, it but the I really don't know what it is, to be honest. Like, I don't have any CDs, I don't have any LP. I think I have maybe a few LPs. I got some for some friends. So for me, but I guess also for a lot of the consumer generation, doesn't necessarily have a nostalgia about what the
Yeah.
physical element of music is.
I think
Is
that's
that
true for
yeah.
the Asian markets too, like, they didn't really have a huge vinyl era. CDs were much more kind of their era and streaming, so, and I think with K-pop, we've seen that's why we're seeing these kind of modifications of what the physical experience can be. I think you've grown up in an era you're probably I'm older than you, I guess. You've grown up in an era where that feeling of collecting wasn't necessarily part of the music experience. But to
Mm.
me, that's always been the music business. The music business has always been about the physical, like having something to sell. At least the music part of it. There's the experience, the concerts, the ticket sales, those sorts of things. That's a big part of how you make money as an artist, but the actual recorded music industry, was always about selling a physical object. It was selling a vinyl record or a cassette or a CD. My feeling is that something happened over the decades that diminished the value of the physical collectible to the point that the consumer, the perspective of the consumer became that it wasn't a worthy investment. It was something that could be easily ripped onto a computer and then shared with friends. And so I think once that happened, there was a loss of control that the music industry had over their product. And so I think what we're seeing now with the rise of vinyl coming back is that there's a there's something tangible, there's something of value to the consumer to have something that feels like, a piece of artwork, something that's rare, something, we're seeing, like, you look at sneaker culture, you look at, all of these collector cultures, they come from a perceived value.
Mm.
A rareness, a scarcity, a specialness, a connection to that brand or that artist. And I think what we're trying to do, just like vinyl, is create that feeling of, I'm willing to pay my good earned money for something that not only supports the artist that I believe in, but also gives me something. At the end of the day, it's about giving consumers something that they can feel good about having, and also make them evangelists for you on the in the long term, because we're not
Mm.
seeing the same kinds of icons and legendary artists that we once saw. I think a lot of that has to do with there's less permanence, and
Mm.
physical media gives you something more permanent to hold on to, and especially whenever you put your money into it. When you invest in something, when you invest in an artist with the purchase of a vinyl or the purchase of a kit album, you're showing not only the artist that you care, but also all of the other fans in the community that you're a part of.
Mm. I'm probably going to butcher the actual numbers, but the last studies I've been sort of reading about vinyl, especially out of Germany, because I think that's a quite interesting market because it's still quite physical, is around 50% of the purchasers don't really play the vinyl. And it's sort of becoming this sort of collector's item, as you say. But I also think there's an element of psychological need for the real. We've talked a lot about this about the podcast, but as technology, AI, is making the discernment of what is real, not real, really, really difficult. I think this relationship to things matters culturally, for a whole population a bit more. You know, I've been very forward leaning to AI for quite a while, and I today for the first I use TikTok a lot because that's sort of where I get a lot of exposure to things. And today for the first time, I saw a video a few times and I was like, "This is a weird video." And it was only the fourth time they realized it was AI. And, like, I have an eye for this. Like, I really have an eye for this.
Yeah.
And I was fooled. And this was the first time I was actually fooled. And, like, I see it so much in my own consumer behavior. Like, I'm shying away for the digital, like, the pure digital behavior a bit and, like, reevaluating where am I putting my time, energy, and money. And I think that's also, I guess, what we're seeing as a movement, with the physical.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, Luminate shared some research at Music Biz this year about that stat that you cited about the ownership of a vinyl of a record player. And it was very generational. It was
Mm.
something like millennials are the 50%. But as you get older, the Gen X and boomers, they are more in the 70 to 80% ownership. What was
Mm.
most interesting to me though was that Gen Z has something like 60 something percent. So
Really?
there's actually, kind of a resurgence that's happening with this younger age group,
Mm.
which is really interesting.
It is interesting. You said something very interesting that I would love to sort of get a bit into. You said that uh, Career, for example, didn't have that vinyl relationship either, and sort of the adaptation of fan behavior, which the East is very famous for as of right now, was something that maybe happened with a bit less of a gap than what have seen in West. Could you describe that a bit more? Like, what was it actually that happened, let's say 10, 15 years ago that we did not experience over in our side of the world?
Yeah, well, I think, what's happening is, K-pop became a cultural movement Japanese pop as well. I mean, there's been these movements that have happened with types of artists. I think idol creation was something that happened, and that really turned into a business model. I think you saw more traditional music. You saw more of the kind of, localized music before that. And as the West came in to the market, as hip hop was introduced, you started to see these artists emerge. It wasn't necessarily K-pop to start. It was hip hop. It was all of these other genres, rock. Now J-rock is becoming so huge, but that's because there was such an influence and inspiration from the West. So again, like I think it's all kind of cultures blending together. We're seeing if you listen to a K-pop song today, it'll have Afro beats, it'll have Latin influences, it'll have music from all over the world, and that's I think really exciting and interesting. And I think that's what's happening with the technology as well, with the formats, the media formats.
Mm. I heard this talk, I guess, like 2 or 3 years ago, from a sort of very senior marketing director at a big Korean music company. And they talked about how they sort of think about breaking artists. And he said something incredibly interesting that I've really been thinking about since is when they, as a major company, a major, they're the biggest there, they don't think about can this scale? Then think about, can we win this niche? It's like, how deep in a relationship with a certain group of audience can we go? And that's basically their strategy, which is, at least if you looked at the West 3 years ago, that was fundamentally opposite of what was going on.
Mhm.
And one of my worries in that statement is like, um, that's not a model you can just replicate. There's a lot of
Mm.
sort of consumer distance to such a model. But are we seeing a shift now? Are we seeing, that sort of getting more and more possible in the West now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's more adoption of, I think on one hand, the pendulum has swung to trying to create a business, so much so that there's manipulation and there's a little bit
Mm.
too much control of businesses and corporate entities that are making sure that they can. You see manipulation of algorithms and all of that. Now it's become a game. I
Mm.
think in the West, I believe that artists artists are more relevant to fans if they are authentic and they're their authentic selves, and they come with their lived experience and their stories and all of that. So I think we're seeing more uh, focus on authenticity as AI and all of these other technologies emerge, and it becomes harder to discern between reality and something that's manufactured or something that's been manipulated or produced.
So now you're sort of launching Kit in the West and in America, where sort of you're president. And one of my, you know, big skepticisms, which might not be true, is like, is it too early to adapt that, cultural aspect of buying physical things, of having these sort of um, social interactions, collectibles? Like, do you think we're ready at scale to do that in this part of the world?
I think we need to stop assuming and apologizing for trying to build a business around an artist.
Ugh.
I think every artist is different. I think it's typical, right? It's we're afraid of annoying the streaming services. We're afraid that people aren't going to adopt it. They have to learn how to do everything. Technologies are always emerging. I think, introducing something new to fans is exciting. And, I come from consumer products, I come from retail marketing, and this is the game. If you want to be a business and you want to have fans and you want them to be excited about you, you need to find out ways to build that fandom. And giving them something of value is priority number one. Giving them a great experience, whether that's a physical product, whether that's a great show, whether that's messages on your social media. I think we've focused way too heavily on manipulating numbers and making it all about the number of streams you have or the number of followers you have. I think if this is a business, it needs to be about finding ways, paths to revenue, and meaningful revenue. And that's what the music business was built on. we have lost generations. I mean, we've lost a decade,
Right.
2 decades of moving towards a model that's not as sustainable, especially for working musicians and emerging musicians. It really sets us back. It dilutes the playing field. On one hand, it democratizes it. Streaming and these platforms make it possible for my 10-year-old nephew to release his music on Spotify, which is awesome. And
Um,
he can be discovered and become, the next Justin Bieber, who knows? But those days are going to be less and less. And so these creating something that's tangible, I think is going to be, there's going to be a select group of artists that do it. Not every artist is meant for this. Not every artist is building that kind of community, but I think the artists that are seeking a lasting connection and a lifelong career with their and connection with their fans will embrace this kind of technology.
mm. Because sort of my honest emotion about sort of fan platforms, direct to fan, merchandise, all these kind of things comes a lot from my experience within the indie world. Like even though I've been very much focused on startups, I've had always a foot in the independent music scene. And for example, there's one band that I help. I wouldn't call me a manager, but I'm not charging money for it either because it wouldn't make sense for me. But like I'm helping them, and they sell out shows, 1,000 cap shows, like really popular certain places of this part of Norway, and doing well. Um, and just running the numbers and some of the things we're doing is just it's so depressing. Like even merchandise, it costs having good merchandise costs for $40 per piece just to produce it, and then we can sell it for 55. Like
Right.
it's the margins are so slim, and the shows, in order to give the fans the experience that they come from, are so incredibly expensive that we need to sell 600 tickets just to break even. And for me, like there's been almost this sort of depressive relationship with the current status of the music industry as production costs are rising, as fuel costs are rising, as infrastructure costs are rising, and not necessarily the willingness to pay for tickets on a like a usual consumer level. And the lack of monetization is just incredibly evident. And then the thing about that, maybe the cultural adaptation to, let's say, techniques that has worked in the East just isn't coming at a pace that's tangible, has been the depressive part. So I think we all agree that we're longing for ways to actually make money, actually add margins on top of the current activities. And solutions like these, kit, vinyl, how do you see it moving in consumer behavior? How do you see it like actually contributing to the current status quo?
So two things that I'll unpack. Number one, the our format doesn't have any minimums for artists. So any artist can upload their music, their videos. Your artist can upload their music and videos to our website and create an audiovisual album experience for free and make that available to their fans on our website.
Yeah.
That's no inventory, no cost up front. That is all revenue. Our minimum order is like 30 units.
Yeah.
So, and that starts at $9. It goes down to like $7 once you get to 300 units. So it's affordable for most
Mm.
people, let alone artists, and they can sell their products for $20 a piece and make, $13 per album sold. That's a real business with
Mm.
a low minimum, low inventory requirement. In terms of COVID
Mm.
was extraordinarily damaging to independent music. Not only were artists not able to tour, a lot of venues had to shutter because of their lost revenues and not being able to pay rent. No understanding of what the future held for live events and live experiences. That's not come back. I mean, it's starting to come back, but, a lot of places we lost, and that really damaged emerging artists more than
Mm.
anyone because those were the places that they would go to gig, to perform. I think we're seeing more non-traditional types of venues opening, restaurants and record stores and, any place an artist can gig and get in front of an audience. I think that's gonna come back. I think there's been just a shift, though. We watched as, music was taken off of TikTok for, a business negotiation. And a lot of artists then were also worried that they weren't going to have their audience anymore, and we faced a ban in the United States with TikTok, where artists were spending all of their time and energy trying to build their communities, and at the whim of some corporations, they could lose that audience. So I think, again, like, we need a return to building community, in your town, in your community, touring, all of the things, doing the work as an artist. I think it's very difficult. I was an opera singer, I was a music teacher. I came from music, and I had a really hard time in the late '90s trying to do that as a career, and I ended up as a marketer. I think it's a lot of luck, it's a lot of resources. If you have wealthy family, if you have a patron, if you have I do believe in crowdsourcing. I do believe in building businesses that are based on, leveraging your community and getting them to support you in some way, whether that's buying merchandise or just paying for your daily updates. There's going to be more of that. I believe that the future is going to be more about creating ways for people to support you, giving people a reason to care about you and support you. So yeah.
I'm curious about the word support because I have some conflicting emotions to what that means. And the way that I see the word support is that there's a charity element to it, and I might just be misinterpreting the word, which for me is uh, both necessary, and I understand that that's a part of the at least the growing independent culture, but also very conflicting when it comes to sort of the effort, energy, and the business is trying to set up. Like, how do you associate that word support?
I think that what artists need are investors. They need patrons. They need support from their fans. Otherwise, it's not a business, it's a hobby, which is
Mm.
fine. There's plenty of musicians in the world that perform for fun and, because they love it, because they're good at it. But I think that the business is figuring out your audience and developing something of value that they're willing to pay for.
What do you think? This is maybe a cheeky question, but and I don't know exactly where I'm going with it, but like an artist that wants to sort of monetize the relationship with their fans, does it make sense to sort of leverage the emotion of support rather than, purely like value exchange as you were growing? Like, how big a part does that count in the business strategy of an independent artist, for example?
Yeah, I guess, are you asking, is it important for artists to understand that they're asking for money or asking
No,
for some
more
kind
like
of
the conscious playing on emotions, that there is this, you also supporting me as you get some benefit rather than this is like
I
a.
don't think it's that cynical. I think you're being cynical. I honestly, I think it's more about, artists being themselves and, creating, and once they've created something, starting with the creation, starting with
Mhm.
something that's real, authentic, true, and then, it's not even necessarily an artist, it's their manager, it's their friends, it's their family, whatever, helping them to do that as their career. They
Mm.
need, there are countries around the world that support artists, that they can get grants, they can get, there's other ways to do it. It's not just always about fan support. I think in markets like USA, we need support from fans. There is really, it's very, very difficult to be a professional musician without having a community of fans that are there, that will pay for the tickets to your shows, that will show up and purchase your merchandise, that will, you know, share that they're a fan as well. I mean, there's a lot of value, and there's a marketing value that comes from having fans as well. So it's not just all
Mm.
dollars, it's also, shares and likes and all of those other things that, again, I don't know, they will be as important in the future as a paycheck. Um, I think artists need to have some kind of living wage, and I'm also seeing, like, there's some really interesting seismic shifts that are happening in the label artist relationship. Chapel Roan went public and talked about how, there's no healthcare, there's no support system for artists,
Hey.
and that actually started a conversation that has given artists some power, and I think they need to take back their power and not be afraid to ask. I did a TEDx talk in 2013. I referenced Amanda Palmer, who did a TED talk about the art of asking, and she talked about how being a street performer, being a busker, taught her everything she needed to know about the music industry. And I think that's so powerful. It was such a future forward perspective on where we are now.
I think that's incredibly interesting. I think that's, as we were talking, I was reflecting about my own emotions because intellectually I follow everything you say. And somewhere in my emotional life, I'm somewhat like sort of being a bit reluctant or resistant to your arguments. And I was trying to figure out like why. Like
Mm.
why is that? Because I believe in everything you say. I don't disagree to one shred of it. But why am I feeling this reluctance? And I was thinking about sort of I studied music at the conservatory, and I've grown up in a culture with music is this very pure expression of oneself,
Mhm.
and the lack of business mindset was somewhat appreciated, maybe not outspoken, but like culturally, like
Mhm.
the pure devotion of art and the pure uh, sacrifice and negligence of your own financials was somewhat comparable to how great an artist you were or how dedicated you were to your music. And I
Mm.
think that's just to some degree,
A
even though I
struggling
understand,
artist.
yeah, I understand that the pure aspect of it, but I also think that that's sort of one of the core aspects of why it's been so toxic to, well, this is the detox, right? And why has it been toxic is because there's been an appreciation of the opposite of livelihood.
Well,
Um,
I came from brand marketing and partnering with artists, and there was an era there's, a good amount of time that I spent talking about selling out and
uh,
how artists would feel like if they were doing a commercial campaign or had their music synced in an advertisement that somehow they'd, sold out. And, there's a great Henry Rollins video, that you can look up on YouTube where he talks about, somebody giving him some grief about having, a song being in a commercial, and he's like, "Do you realize that that is not only supporting artists and giving artists some money for their work, it's also introducing people to that music. That's
mm,
also opening up doors for that artist. And, that may create the next, your next most passionate fan.
mm,
So it's, I think the era of, and I think hip hop and a lot of other genres have now kind of embraced brand partnerships and, kind of the sponsorship, credibility, like you're big enough to have a commercial campaign with Nike. You're big enough to have a commercial campaign with Hasbro. It doesn't matter what brand. It's, wow, you're getting your money. There's something that you're doing right because people care enough and your music's good enough to be on that level of a scale.
mm,
Um, it's still genre specific. There's still artists that will, you would think would be very opposed to being diluted or having their credibility diluted in some way by having their music used in a television show or whatever. But again, this is the business side. There's the art side of art. I'm an artist. I'm a musician myself. I know I do it because I love it and I'm good at it and I make some money when I do it, but I can't pay my bills that way. I think there are artists. I think artists that want to be professional artists need to find a way, whether that's constant touring, whether that's merchandise, whether that's endorsement deals, sponsorships, all of these business models, those are all part of the toolbox to be a professional artist today.
mm,
It's always been that way. It's either been that or you become part of a label deal or you sign up for something else, but those have also proven to be really challenging because then you're at the mercy of those entities that have control over your marketing, over your positioning, over your music itself. But even that is changing. I think, artists have so much more control over their own audiences.
Mm.
The label relationship, I think, is becoming more about the marketing and more about the support so that the artist doesn't need to focus on that. The artist focuses
Right.
on being themselves. And then there's the business, and the business is responsible for, everything else. It's just when you're starting out, you're everything. When you're starting out as an artist, you really need to think about every aspect of how you're engaging, how you're communicating with your audience, all of the different platforms and tools that you have at your disposal. And that's why I like the idea of a physical product that is democratized, that is something that an artist can produce and make available to their loyal fans. They don't need to have thousands of fans. They can have 50 really good fans that are willing to support them and own a piece of their journey and give them something that will help them, pay for their next, you know, recording session or help them pay for their studio musicians or all of the other things that their food, putting food on the table.
Hmm. We sort of covered this a bit early in the talk, but I would love to have some clarification on it. Um, the company you work for, and now very central in, has existed for a while, and obviously, the whole movement towards fandom and products, physical products, has been going on for a while. Like, why is it now that you guys are entering hard? Like, what is it in the market movements? What is it that has deemed this a good time to do it? What are the signals you're reading that makes this a good investment?
Ownership has become really important to people. People want to feel like they own their music, that they have something that's more tangible.
Mm,
When you have a subscription for a platform, you're basically renting access to your favorite artists. You're not owning anything.
mm,
So I think that that's a big aspect of this. I think, culturally where we are in the world, I'm a marketing futurist, so I think about, not just the product that I'm marketing, but also, the world and the environment and our society and all of the things that are happening. And I think it's comfort. I think that people are seeking something that they can hold on to. And I think it's also about building community. So with our product, which I'll show you, we have something that you can actually hold in your hands. So it's a collectible, but this is actually like a little keychain. So you can show people that you're part of this tribe. It's tribalism. It's ownership, and I think it's emotional. I think it's something that's comforting for people. To feel like they're connected not only to their favorite artists, but to a community of people.
mm. Do you believe that the companies come in as a part of the educational wave, or is now early in the wave that's already created? Like, where do you place yourself in that sort of adaptation scale? Is it the early adopters you're going into now, or are you a bit later than that?
It really depends. I mean, our marketing efforts so far have just been releasing music and working with artists and having the artists communicate to their fans about why they've done this project and why they're, creating an album experience. I think that is basically what we're trying to create our album experiences. And I think with MTV, with video, with all of the audio visual aspects of music now, it's fashion, it's not just audio. I think we're uniquely positioned for artists to be able to give their fans something that's a more complete vision for their music, that's the, kind of, uh, manifestation of their creative vision in a project, rather than just a single, rather than just a clip that they can use in a TikTok or whatever.
Hmm. But is there indicators already now that this is something that the market is ready for? Is there reluctance? Like, what sort of educational journey towards consumers do you expect to go into?
the market is ready for anything. Like, there's no I think that the idea of the market, not being able to understand or embrace something is of course, there are people that will resist anything new. It's habit forming. It's something that you need to, educate people on how it works, all of those things. But that happens every day. And I think with technology moving as fast as it is, we're so used to new things. We're so used to embracing things. Things that exist today didn't exist 2 years ago. I mean, there are, technologies that exist. So I don't think we can underestimate the intelligence of the market and
Mm.
the hunger of the market for something. Labubus are like the biggest thing in the world right now. Why? Nobody knows. They're cute, they're random, but again, like, did Pop Mart worry that the market wasn't ready for something like that? No, they created something because it was interesting. It was something they put into the universe, and the universe embraced it. So
True.
yeah. I'm not I've worked, 25 years in marketing and launching products, for companies like McDonald's and Hasbro and Intel and Logitech, and, every time you launch a new product, there's always a concern that the market isn't going to embrace it, but there's always a niche. I think niche is what the world is about now. It's finding your tribe, finding your fan base, and allowing that to kind of build into something bigger. It doesn't need to be everyone.
Mm. I guess that might also just, from a startup perspective, even though your company really isn't a startup, but maybe it's a startup environment in the new area. Like one of the aspects that's companies rarely has the luxury of is weathering the storm for a while.
Mm.
And but now you might have that because you have this whole history, you have this whole traction, and
Yeah.
supposedly also, finances to say, okay, if it even takes some time, we're still going to be here. And that's the
Yeah,
insecurity a lot of companies need to go through if they try something similar.
absolutely. North America is definitely a startup, for us. Like, we are starting up in North America. However, we've sold 10 million albums worldwide. We work with 17, we work with Blackpink, we work with Monsta X, we've worked with SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment. I mean, like, all of the biggest, these are huge companies, and these are not small, uh releases. I mean, these are gigantic releases, and not only released in Korea. There's sales in 200 countries worldwide. So we are selling a lot of product. We're doing very well, and we've been doing it for now, a decade. I mean, we have 26 patents on our technology. We're not operating from a position of weakness. We know what the challenges are in educating a new market, but we also have plenty of artists that are really excited about this and see its potential. And it took time to grow in Korea as well. I mean, we've evolved our technology. We started as NFC technology, which was very basic, kind of just a tag that could connect from a card to your phone. And then we even had a device that plugged into the headphone jack of the phone at one point called a Kino, which was great. But then all of the device manufacturers did away with the headphone jacks, and so we created a sonic technology. So we have an ultrasonic technology. There's a little button at the top of this. When you click it, it emits an ultrasonic sound that unlocks the content on your phone, meaning that we don't rely on NFC, we don't rely on Bluetooth. All that you need is a microphone. And so now our product works with tablets, with head-mounted displays when everyone goes to VR in the future, just like, yeah, Ready Player One, we're ready for that. You'll get to experience your Kit album in VR. So yeah, it's like we're trying to continue to be future proof. I say, we're Kit better. We're always looking at what could be better, always improving our app, always improving our physical product. Um, so, I think that adaptability and flexibility is what will help us to be competitive, and, it'll help us to achieve things in other markets as well.
Mm. It's very interesting, and I'm a very pragmatic guy, and one of the things that sort of excites me in this conversation might be a bit different than what you, for example, with your marketing brain are excited about, and that is really for me the price tag. Um, and let me explain why. Because sales are happening, merchandise, vinyl, um, other similar experiences, but the margin's so incredibly slim. So that's also why, I was talking about, vinyl. For example, the band I help, there's really only one vinyl plant in Norway, for example. All
Mm,
of Norway, there's one vinyl plant, and you want to buy for them for several reasons, or you can go to Poland. But like, if you want to buy it locally, which is a great story, it's $45 per print just to pay that, and how much can you sell it for? Maybe 55? So it just becomes symbolic like everything else, and even if you order for Poland, like, maybe it's half price, but, like, the upfront cost and the time it takes to make it, it's so tedious. I was, even getting an email yesterday from the band, like, "Hey, we need to do some more vinyl prints." I'm like, freak I don't that process is so terrible, and I hate it so much, but I'll do it. But that for me, the price point is what really excites me because I can see from a consumer behavior without knowing it in full that the value could be really interesting. It can have the same sort of sentimental value as a vinyl might have in a different, maybe interesting format. The price point of which you can engage with it is fundamentally different. And
mm.
that for me is really the pragmatic excitement I get, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also quality. We're delivering photo cards and stickers and buttons and all of these different things that the fans, just depending on the artist, little booklets. We did an album with Duran Duran that it was a little bit more expensive. It was like 39.99. Again, still, less
Yeah.
expensive than vinyl, a lot of vinyl. Comes in a coffin-shaped box with all covers of spooky songs by Duran Duran. They're covering Billie Eilish and Susie and the Banshees and other artists. But it comes with a 22-page booklet and photo cards and a pin
Mhm.
and I mean all kinds of things for fans. It's almost like unboxing something. We talk about unboxing videos. This is blind box, I guess is what I'm referring to. If you think about like blind box packaging, like Labubus. Like Labubu is popular because you buy it un like sight unseen. You don't know which Labubu you're getting. You just buy the box, you open it up and it's a surprise. And that's almost like it's chosen you. I think for fans, when they open a box and they know they're getting the album, they know they're getting the music, but then they find out that they're also getting all of these other things together with the videos and, sometimes it's behind the scenes movies and shout outs and all of these other things. I think that then makes people become ambassadors and evangelists for not just the artist, but also the experience that they've had. So that's something that I think is exciting. It's a valuable value experience, if that makes sense. It doesn't cost you a lot, but the ticket to entry, you price and over deliver.
Amazing. Well, it's good. And Jennifer, it's been a pleasure talking to you and hear about Kit. And I am constantly looking for ways to be encouraged because I default to the dark, and also disclaimed that before, and
I
also
do
sort of
too, honestly. Honestly, I am as much as everyone thinks I'm the glass half full, I'm really not. Like, I really do look at things from a very cynical perspective, and I think that's what makes you a good marketer. That's probably what's when you think as an entrepreneur and look at the biggest challenges that you have ahead of you, I think that sets you up for success more than anything. Um, so
I agree, and even though that can be difficult, sort of maybe always having that mindset, I think, that's the price you pay, but, uh, Jennifer, it's been brilliant, and I'm looking so much forward to this, and I get very excited, as you talk about it. I still have this hope of adaptation of Eastern consumer culture. I know it's not gonna be equivalent or the same, it's not gonna be exactly the same, but the financial impact it can have on niche interactions or communities or engagement needs to happen in order for this to have my personal interest again. Like I have lost the financial interest of the artist economy as of now. I just have lost it. And I'm looking for opportunities to regain that hope because I do want to be there. I just don't want to not make anything. And I hope that initiatives like this, not initiatives, but products or consumer changes like this would be a contributing factor into regaining momentum again. I think that's beautiful with Kit.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I hope so
Good.
too. I think it really gives me personal joy to help fans find new ways to experience artists, especially fans that have never experienced a physical collectible type of experience with an artist. Going to a show and having the artist sign something for you that's, their music. I think, that's that's a meaningful thing, that's something that you'll remember for the rest of your life, that you'll stay connected with that artist forever. I think, if we're just equating success in music to the number of streams, the number of followers, those sorts of things, that's a race to the bottom. That is not how
Mhm.
you build a business, and that's not how you really connect with people in the long term. So, um, and I don't think products are for everyone. I think not everyone wants a collection of things. You can see from my house that I collect lots of things. I'm that kind of person. But I do think that support for artists and, giving people a reason to purchase, giving them something that's exclusive or something that they won't see anywhere else is a fine way of marketing and building a business.
Hmm. Jennifer, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I wish you the best with Kit.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I don't know if it's worth including, but we've also done it's with Snoop Dogg. This is, the Snoop Dogg Kit album. So this was done for a 30th anniversary of Death Row Records. The the piece de resistance with this is that it actually folds into a doghouse. This is his doggy style album, and inside it comes with a comic book that includes, you can see, like, Suge Knight credited, beautiful little comic book there. There's Dr. Dre's notes from the studio, comes with a coaster, comes with a Death Row Records sticker, has a patch included, with a little carabiner that then you can put on your Kit album, and you can take it around and show people, and you're the best fan of Snoop Dogg.